Global coronavirus deaths topped 100,000 today, according to Johns Hopkins University. But multiple reports out of the White House indicate the president is still pushing to reopen U.S. businesses by May 1st. And as he said again today, he's ready for a rebound sooner rather than later.
In 4 days, we had the biggest market increase, stock market increase that we've had in 50 years. That tells you that there's a pent-up demand. That tells you they want to get back. There's something good going to happen. I really believe that. There's something very good going to happen. We have to get back.
While many public health experts are questioning the wisdom of a rush to reopen, there's no denying a lot of people are hurting financially, with 16 million people filing for unemployment in the past 3 weeks alone. And here in Massachusetts, it could be soon get a lot worse. The state unemployment rate could be over 25% by June. That's the shocking news from a new economic analysis from Pioneer Institute, considering unemployment was at just 2.5% in February. This dead-as-a-doornail intersection in Kendall Square and these once bustling high-tech buildings tell it all. There is nothing happening. Akamai, Biogen, no one is going in, only a few people stroll by. We already know the tech sector has been hit hard. 2 food-related companies that produce software for the restaurant industry this week announced layoffs of about 1,400 employees, and that's just a start. Needless to say, the Boston area food and restaurant business has taken a drastic hit, as have hotels and the travel industry. People walking down Newbury Street today were not going to find a restaurant open as usual. Joe's, Stephanie's. Tables outside were empty, chairs stacked up. Then there was the occasional open for business sign, curbside only, of course. Thousands of restaurant workers around the state are out of a job. Banks are open for limited service, mostly ATMs, but not a lot of people going in there either. Retail has been devastated. No one at Bloomingdale's. Many workers there laid off or put on furlough. But as any of you who have grocery shopped lately know, the doors are wide open. People are pouring in with limits on how many at a time. Needless to say, grocery employees are not among the lines now forming up at the unemployment office. All right, I'm joined now by Charlie Chieppo, Senior Fellow at the Pioneer Institute and former Policy Director for Governor Mitt Romney. Well, Charlie, your group did that study today about the unemployment rate going to over 25% in June. I think the big question everybody wants to know is, how long would that last? If let's say that the economy or things start to open in even mid-May or by June 1st, how many of those jobs will come back quickly?
Well, let me say this. First of all, we are in such uncharted territory here that everybody's estimate is, there's some element of guesswork to all of it. And I have never more hoped to be wrong in anything that we've done than with this. But I would say certainly this is not going to be a Great Depression kind of thing in the way that it took over a decade to come back. I don't think it's going to look like that. But I think it's probably a little wishful thinking to think it's just immediately going to bounce back and what everybody's talking about, a V sort of recession, because particularly the restaurant industry comes to with the low margins and not a lot of cushion. I mean, all these restaurants, unfortunately, are not going to come back. So it is going to take some time.
And the idea of people sitting side by side, what are they going to do about that? But what about the tech industry? Because a lot of tech industries are surviving. I mentioned a few that have had to do massive layoffs, the ones that are servicing the food industry, for instance. But there are others who are being really creative. All their people are working home. Some of them are doing massively well.
Well, that's right. Look at Zoom, the way we're having this conversation now. These kind of industries are doing incredibly well. So, it seems to me to be all across the board in tech. But generally speaking, I sure would rather be in tech than in entertainment or hospitality right now.
Yeah. So the Federal Reserve Chairman yesterday, Jerome Powell, was very serious and studied in his sort of cautiously optimistic projections. But he thinks that this is really going to be temporary. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
When the spread of the virus is under control, businesses will reopen and people will come back to work. There is every reason to believe that the economic rebound, when it comes, can be robust.
Are you that optimistic?
Well, I'm not quite that optimistic. I mean, I hope he's right. But I think there's a couple of questions here. One is that we don't know when the spread of the virus is going to be controlled. And it seems to me that the longer it is before it's controlled, the longer it's going to take to actually bounce back from the losses that we're going through right now.
So Massachusetts is in store for a $2.6 billion infusion from the federal government as part of the coronavirus emergency bailout package. How does that get spread around? Who gets saved? I mean, small businesses, big businesses. How does the money, who decides what goes where?
Well, I mean, part of it is one of the things that we've been waiting on is sort of the rules that go along with this, so we know really how to process it. Certainly, some of it's going to go to small businesses. Some of it is going to go to things like bolstering the unemployment fund and those kind of things. So it's a whole wide array of things that it's going to go to, and it's a combination of the feds and state officials who are going to decide what goes where. But I think, just today, another study came out. The CARES Act had in total for all states $150 billion worth of aid. And this study that just came out today said that it looks like we would need states will actually need another $500 billion to get through this. So,
which looks like that could happen. That could happen.
Yeah, and the $2.67 billion that we're getting is nice, but the needs are certainly greater. It's going to be a tremendous challenge.
On a real micro level, there are a lot of people, especially in the Massachusetts area, because a lot of them are creative people. A lot of them work the margins of the tech industry. There's gig workers, there's day workers, there's self-employed. None of them qualify for unemployment. What can the state do to help them?
Well, under the CARES Act, they will qualify. I mean, normally those groups, being self-employed myself, I'm well aware, don't qualify for unemployment insurance. But for the remainder of this year, under the new federal law, those groups will qualify. So in the short run, once that's another area where sort of setting up the rules and figuring out how it's going to work has delayed it a little bit. But the checks are supposedly going to start to go up before the end of this month. So, but that should certainly help for people who are self-employed or independent contractors or those kind of things, because they will temporarily qualify. Plus, the other thing that the federal government has done is they're going to add $600 a week to every unemployment check, which would, be a huge help.
All of us are sort of inundated by these numbers, projected number of deaths, projected number of infections. Your company has done the projected number of unemployed. What is the metric? How do you even figure that out?
Well, for this one, in terms of the unemployed, the number of unemployed, estimating the unemployed by June in Massachusetts, what we did was we looked at a study by a St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis economist, and essentially he did it on a national level, and we were able to sort of take what he did and extrapolate it to Massachusetts. So it is certainly, I don't think any of us would claim it's precise, but I think it's as good an educated guess as anyone. And right now, if you just look at the percentage of the civilian workforce in Massachusetts that has applied for unemployment insurance in the last 2 or 3 weeks, you add it to the unemployment rate, we're pretty clearly already over 15%. So
the Boston Globe printed a list of companies who would have laid off people, a lot of them individuals, like Boston University, 1,600 employees. A lot of them included student employees. You don't necessarily think of some of these institutions having to, they still have a base. A lot of them have big endowments, but you can't keep churning out salaries if you don't have an income.
Well, you sure can. And I'll tell you what, I'm an adjunct at Suffolk. And, for a place like Suffolk that doesn't have a huge endowment, they're having to give big refunds for all the people who are no longer living in the dorms and stuff. And so,
do they have to do that? Do they have to do? Are they all doing refunds?
Yeah, there was an article in the Globe the other day. The only one that isn't is, I guess, Northeastern has some students living in a privately developed apartment building, and they're having to continue to pay. But everybody else is giving refunds, as far as I know.
Huh. That's another area that's really troublesome is housing, because we just passed the first of the month, and the next first of the month is coming up in 2 weeks, and all these rents and the businesses, some of those businesses, some of the fancy districts of downtown Boston, those rents are so enormous, they barely make it as it is.
Well, I was going to say, that's why, you've got empty storefronts on Newbury Street, even
we
before
do,
this happened, because those rents are just unimaginably high.
All right.
So it's a terrible situation.
Charlie Chieppo, I agree with you on this one. I hope you're wrong with your projections, but and hopefully if you're right, people will come back fairly quickly.
Yes.
Charlie Chieppo,
Amen.
thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.